Hey everyone, Chase Elleby and Joel Williams from Williams Elleby, and today we're going to talk to you about a topic that's probably going to be more geared towards attorneys. But this video we're going to discuss things to consider if you're either a defense lawyer thinking to switch to the plaintiff side, or if you're a plaintiff's lawyer or a defense lawyer thinking of just starting your own plaintiff's practice. So, as you may know or may learn, I was once a defense lawyer. I was a defense lawyer for about 3 years, and then switched to the plaintiff side. So I'm going to talk a little bit about things to consider when you go from defense to plaintiff side, and then Joel is going to talk about more, okay, when you're going to start your own practice, what are other sort of things you need to look into before you sort of take the leap. So, Joel, I would say the number one thing for all defense lawyers to think about when switching sides, and just like any business, is how are you going to make money, right? So on the defense side, you bill your time, right? You bill your time in 0.2 increments, sometimes 0.1, and that's how you're paid. At the end of the month, you submit your time, whether it's the insurance company or whoever's paying those bills, and they pay you on a monthly basis. Well, on the plaintiff side, it's contingency, right? So we get a percentage of the cases that we resolve, and we don't get paid until that case is done. Where on the defense side, you're paid monthly. Like as soon as you send those bills, if you have a good client, they're paying you on time. Not the case on the plaintiff side. So one thing I always talk to friends who are thinking about switching is, okay, if you're going to switch, be sure you've got a little nest egg or something, because you're not going to get paid for a while unless you got a case that's about ready to settle.
Yeah, probably at least 4 to 6 months.
Yeah,
because if somebody calls you,
that's early. Sorry.
Yeah, if it's the simplest case possible, because your client, if it's an injury case, is going to have to treat, and once they're done treating, you'll have to get those records and bills. Once the records and bills are in, you're going to have to put together a demand letter. You're going to have to get the letter sent off. You're going to have to give the insurance company the appropriate amount of time to respond to it, and then it may or may not settle at that point. So even if your client only treats for 2 months, then you got to draft it. You got to send it off. If you're giving them 30 days, you're already at over the 3-month mark at that point. So.
Right, exactly. So I think the overall, overarching point there is just be aware that the income, at least for the first 6 months to a year, as far as money coming in on a monthly basis, is going to be completely different than what you're used to.
Yeah, and one other thing with that is, one thing I see former defense lawyers struggle with sometimes is failing to identify where they should spend their time. Right? Because when you're billing by the hour, it's okay to spend time on every little thing. On our side, we really have to identify the issues and the facts and things that we need to hone in on, that's going to move the needle.
Exactly.
And not waste time on things that don't really matter.
Right, and that brings up another point, and we'll just kind of jump into that one, is really on the plaintiff side and the defense side. On the defense side, you're playing defense, right? On the plaintiff side, you're playing offense. So to Joel's point, you have to switch your mindset from being a defense lawyer to a plaintiff's lawyer, thinking that you have to push things. It's our duty, it's our burden, we have to push the cases. Where on the defense side, you sort of wait for things to come to you, and you're counterpunching. You're defending, counterpunching, whatever it might be. So the timing of cases and how you work things are completely different, as well as what you spend your time on. Right? As a defense lawyer, when I used to do defense work, let's say, for instance, I got some interrogatory responses from the plaintiff, meaning I sent questions to the plaintiff and they responded, and they told me about 15 or 16 different providers they treated with. Well, as a defense lawyer, I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm going to send non-party requests to all these providers, and I can bill my time for each one that I send. So my mentality is thinking, okay, this is a great billing opportunity. And on the plaintiff side, you're not thinking about billing. You're thinking about, okay, I need to get my client to trial as quickly, as efficiently as possible. That's going to benefit my client, but also keep in mind of the time and effort you're putting into those cases.
Yeah. Essentially, from a plaintiff's lawyer's perspective, witnesses and documents are the only things that matter as far as proving your case, because you have the burden of proof. You've got to prove it, and you're going to prove it through witnesses and documents. So spending your time finding important witnesses that move the needle and finding those documents that move the needle are going to help your client as well as your firm get to where it needs, or he or she needs to be, as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly. So the next point I'm going to talk about, kind of two things that sort of merge together, but one of them is clients, right? Where do you get your clients? Now, if you're an in-house defense lawyer, saying working for State Farm or Progressive or Geico, whatever it might be, your client's your boss, right? You're
That's
going to
the last thing you're thinking
You don't
about.
need clients. You're going to have plenty of cases. But if you work at a private defense firm where you have multiple clients, which is what I did, your clients are usually institutions as opposed to individuals, and institutions meaning insurance companies. And there might be individuals in the sense of this one adjuster who's your best friend that's going to send you cases no matter what, but you're having to focus on corporate institution, usually more sophisticated people that quote unquote know the game. And one client might be, 60% of your business, right? So you have to be, on the defense side, you have to be aware that you have to cater to that client, you have to cater to that industry that you're working towards. On the plaintiff side, your client can be anyone at any time, and it can be the most sophisticated president of the United States, whoever it might be, down to someone who didn't even graduate from middle school and got injured. So your client base is completely different, which is why we give billboard lawyers a bad rap sometimes, because that's a video for another day. But for us, you don't know who your client's going to be, so you're advertising, you cast a wide net. So that's what the clients. Now, another thing to think of is with the clients is when you have certain types of clients, you're communicating with them differently. Mm-hmm. So on the defense side, it's written reports, 2, 3, 4, 5-page reports that are very specific, talking a lot about procedure, talking a lot about pros and cons, whatever it might be. And again, your audience is someone who is in the game, knows what's going on. On the plaintiff side, the communication is completely different. If I ever sent a report that I used to send to defense clients that I sent to plaintiff's clients, they would be like, what in the world does all this mean?
They would either throw it in the trash and not pay attention to it, or they would completely freak out because it would blow their minds as to what you're trying to relay to them. Yeah,
and that's exactly right. And it's more frequent on the plaintiff side to talk with clients because you're talking with everyday people who have never been in this experience or this situation before. So you're having to answer a lot of questions and communicate succinctly but effectively, and knowing the audience that you're communicating to.
Yeah, why would you write a 10-page report to someone who doesn't understand 9 pages of it?
Right, exactly. So I think those are sort of some of the highlights, the things to consider switching from the defense to the plaintiff side.
And one other thing, talking about dealing with different types of clients, mm-hmm. from our side, from a defense perspective, obviously, if you've got that one client that's 60% of your business, you're going to go out of your way to cater to them. When you're a plaintiff's lawyer, it's so important that no matter whether somebody's got a $5,000 case or a $5 million case, that you give them the time and attention that they deserve, and they feel like, even if in your mind they're not your most important client, they feel like they are.
Right.
And sometimes that just means text messages or phone calls or emails or whatever, or getting birthday cards, or just sometimes making the phone call and say, hey Chase, I was just thinking about you today, man. How you doing?
Right.
It may have nothing to do with the case. An insurance adjuster does not want to hear from you to say, hey, how you doing today, Susie? They don't care. If there's not a case update, don't waste their time. But from a plaintiff's perspective, it matters when they know that their lawyer cares about them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, well, why don't we talk a little bit about if you're going to start your own firm, things to consider, whether you're coming from the defense side, starting your own plaintiff's firm, or you're with a plaintiff's firm and you want to start your own firm.
Yeah, so the things that we just talked about apply no matter whether you're going to go work for a plaintiff's firm or whether you're going to start your own. Mm-hmm. But there's some additional considerations when you're going to be starting a business at the same time that you're making the switch or the jump. I would say the very first thing that you need to make sure you do is have a good mentor. Have someone who's done it before, that's done it the right way, who you respect and you trust to give you advice on anything and everything that could come up. If you have the opportunity to share space with that person so that you can communicate with them on a daily basis, that's even better, because even though we're going to talk about 4 or 5 things here, there's 1,000 other things that will come up that you don't expect, like how do I set up stamps?
Right.
How do I keep up with copies?
Right.
All of these things that you don't think about, they don't teach you these things in law school. So have a mentor that can help you with the day-to-day operations, or if you don't have a mentor, seriously consider hiring a paralegal who has basically run a law firm before, mm-hmm. That can come in and help you with those type of things. They can be worth their weight in gold when it comes to that. Secondly, you really do have to think about the business aspect of it. So everything from where you're going to do your banking, who's going to do your accounting, who's going to handle your HR, what are your employee benefits going to be, Insurance, malpractice insurance, if you own a building, general liability insurance, I feel like I pay more premiums in insurance than any normal person ever should, but you have to think about that. Who's going to do your taxes? How are you going to set up your corporation? Are you going to be a LLC? Are you going to be taxed as a C Corp or an S Corp? All of these things need to come into play when you're thinking about the financial side of your business, because if you don't take care of the financial side of your business, you won't be able to handle the cases that you're bringing in.
Right, and it comes, sort of that income versus expenses that we've talked about, right? So you've got to handle the financial side, because then you also have to determine, okay, when's a good time to, say, hire that new paralegal or expand out and get this certain technology that's going to help with my case flow and things like that. So yeah, it's super important. And then knowing the timing, I think going back to having a mentor too is important, because then you'll know the timing of when you should do these types of things and when it's important to do these types of things, because they've already done it before, right?
Yeah.
They've had those pitfalls or not had the pitfalls. So
yeah, and I would set, number 3 is I would set some benchmarks for your income versus expense ratio, because it's going to be important to pay attention to that. A mentor of mine told me one time that if you can keep your expenses at 50% or less of your total income, then you're going to be doing really well, right? If you can keep the expenses lower than 50%, you're going to be doing exceptionally well. And so that goes back to what you were saying, Chase, of knowing when to bring on additional staff, knowing when to buy a building, or knowing when to bring on those extra expenses. You have to have the timing right, because one thing that you'll find when you switch to the plaintiff side is that your income will go like this. You know what I mean? Like one day you're on top of the mountain, and then the next 3 months you make almost nothing, and then you resolve the big case. And you want that median line to be fairly straight, so it's predictable moving forward, or at least gradually going up, right? There's a lot of plaintiffs lawyers that have made $1 million and spent $1 million and been broke as a joke,
right.
And can't even run their business. I could give you a list, and I won't do it, but I mean it happens way too often. So you have to be smart and have a plan of how to make the money, but then also what to do with it once you make it.
Right, and kind of what I talked about with, when you switch from the defense to the plaintiff side, where the defense side you're used to that steady income and things like that. The plaintiff side is, especially when you're starting out. When you're more established, it's different. But when you're starting out, you might go 3 months without even settling a case. Mm-hmm. So you got to keep that in mind. Okay, do I want to rent space? Do I want to work from home while I get things going? Those sort of considerations definitely need to be sort of vetted before you make the leap. So.
Yeah. Also, I think as a plaintiff's lawyer, you really have to know how to do everything. And by everything, I mean you got to know how to file your own cases.
Yeah.
You got to know how to run the stamps machine. You got to know how to do your own research. You got to know, obviously, how to do the lawyer things. But you have to know how to run a business. You got to know how to run a website. You got to know how to manage social media. You got to know about insurance and what's needed and all of those things. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't know how to do it as the owner of your firm, you can't police the people that you pay to do it for you, right? That's when you get to that point. So, when I started out, before we hired my first paralegal, who's now our office manager, we were still licking stamps back in the day. It wasn't where you just run the envelope through. Right. But I had to do all that. I had to know how to print stuff on an envelope. Just simple day-to-day things. You got to know how to do it. So that you can teach other people how to do it. And then you have to come up with a good case management system. So if you have 10 cases, you don't need a $10,000 case management software to keep up with all of this stuff, especially if you're the only person working on it as you're getting started initially. As your firm grows, that need may come into play, and you can either develop your own case management system, or you can use one that's already marketed to people every day. But you have to come up with a way to track deadlines, a way to manage your documents, a way to follow up on requests when you order medical records, when you send out open records, when you do all of these things that require somebody else to respond to you. How do you follow up on it? Because if you don't follow up on it, then you're not going to get it, and you're not going to have the people and the documents you need that we talked about earlier to win your case.
Yeah, and I think you talking about all those things to consider. I think especially if you've come from a big firm and you're thinking about switching, you're going to have to really realize everything that's done for you that you don't even realize. And then when you switch to the plaintiff side and realize you have to do all of that yourself, just ask yourself if that's something you can handle. Now, it's going to be on a lot less scale, depending, on how many cases and things like that you're going to bring over. But Joel's exactly right. Do you know how to go and e-file something? Do you know how to call the sheriff's office and send over the check to get them served? Do you know where to serve the person?
Do you know how to print the check?
Right, exactly. All those types of things that, they seem kind of silly, like I'm sitting here talking about it, but it's absolutely something to consider when you're thinking about starting your own firm.
Yep. And I think another thing that's really important is there are a lot of books, there are a lot of systems out there where it's how to do this and how to do that. The best of those books, and I'm not going to make any recommendations here, but the best of those seminars and books are not the ones where they teach you how they did it. Because you have to do you. You have to know what your strengths are, you have to know what your weaknesses are, and develop a system that will allow you to hold yourself accountable and hold those that are working with you accountable to make sure that you succeed.
Right.
And that system is going to look different for everybody depending on what their strengths and weaknesses are. And the last thing I would say is it's really important to decide who you are and what you want to be known for. So if your passion is in medicine or medical malpractice law or anything like that, then specialize in that. But know going into it the risk associated with that kind of casework. If you are great at multitasking and handling 100 different cases at one time, then you might want to go into like car wrecks or slip and falls and things like that, and that's fine too. But you really have to, I think, do a self-evaluation and understand and appreciate who you are and what your passion is, and then pursue that. Because if you pursue something, maybe your passion is making money and you'll do whatever it takes to make the money, but if you have to do something you hate doing to make that money, then your life's not going to be better by making the switch. And you're probably, if you're thinking about making the switch, you're probably doing it because you're unhappy where you're at now.
Right.
So figure out what makes you happy, and then figure out a way that you can take that and generate business and income from it and help other people, because that's really what being a plaintiff's lawyer is all about, is helping people in their time of need. And if you can find someone who needs something that you're passionate about, then it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other tips?
No, this is definitely a topic we could talk about for a long time, but I think that's a good sort of groundwork of things just to start considering if you really do want to switch sides or you really are looking to start your own firm. So.
Yep. We're here if anybody's thinking about making that switch and you just need to have a conversation. We're not business coaches. We're not any of this, so it's not like we're going to say, well, you give us $1,000 and let's have lunch with you. That's not how we operate. We're more than happy to talk to you. We're more than happy to help. We'll tell you about the mistakes we've made. We'll tell you about the things that have worked for us. So if you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us by calling us at 833-LEGAL-GA. Or you can put a comment in the section below in this video if you don't mind the world seeing it. But if this video has been helpful to you, please give us a thumbs up or subscribe to our channel. Otherwise, we will see you next week.